So yes, I have actually finished the whole thing. I finished it a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking about it somewhat and taking a few notes. And generally, kind of, whew, I mean, we all know how vast it is, and it really is the vastest. But anyway,
Силы Западной Европы перешли границы России, и началась война. То есть совершилось противное человеческому разуму и всей человеческой природе событие.
yeah, it is 1,346 pages in this Penguin edition, and this is the Anthony Briggs translation from 2005. And more about that and how the significance of the different translations somewhat later. But there we are. Interestingly enough, the portrait on the front cover is Mademoiselle Caroline Riviere, and it was painted in 1805. And there's a little full version of her. That's, yeah. Anyway.
Жизнь, между тем, настоящая жизнь людей с своими существенными интересами здоровья, болезни, труда, отдыха, своими интересами мысли, науки, поэзии, музыки, любви, дружбы, ненависти, страстей, шла, как и всегда, независимо и вне политической близости или вражды с Наполеоном Бонапартом.
Okay, War and Peace. How to go about it? Well, first, to wrap up well, properly, and keep the cold out. And hopefully I'm Russian proof here, even against any Russian bunts. So, what did I think of it? Well, I thought it was 5 stars out of 5, for sure, definitely. And yeah, the general reading of it. I mean, I have come across a couple of reviews that have kind of said, well, you know, there are issues. There are issues with some repetition, and there are some issues with relevance for the text and various chapters remaining relevant. But I think probably that all needs a little bit of thought, which is kind of support what kind of classic literature is supposed to be about, as far as I know. So, is in this interim kind of segment, if you're reading this and you're thinking something like that, then, well, continue reading. That's my advice. That's my recommendation, and I'll get onto that as well a little bit later. But first, in answer to a couple of little questions, what will I take away from the book? I mean, what will I take? What do I think I'll take away from it? And my idea is that I will have some idea of a battle of the era of the Napoleonic Wars. I'm a guy who personally witnessed the Crimean War and all that means, but also how relatable family life is to today. Obviously, minus the servants, the estate stewards, and the generic upper class wealth and all that kind of stuff, and the vast palaces, mansions, and rooms where presumably they, I mean, some of the rooms in their houses are actual little mini theatres, or perhaps not even that many anyway. And obviously, some of them even had their own symphonies. That is obviously the wealthiest of them. So, yes, bling, have your own orchestra. That's the thing. Would I recommend the book to others, and why? Yes, I would. mainly because it is written so well and is such an easy read. If you're daunted by the vastness of it and the corresponding time you think you will lose acquiring its content, you will in fact gain, and you will gain that time and much, much more. People like to show all their little colourful tabs that is all their, all the important bits and the significant bits. And I don't do that at all, funnily enough, out of interest. I followed the Adler idea of just putting a little pencil line vertically next to any sentence. And I've kind of got a bit creative on that front by using various dots and little shapes and things. But otherwise, curiously enough, I started out reading up half of it. It's got no markings at all. Okay, a third of it. Yeah, about a third of it's got no markings at all. And then I during that time, I was simply writing down page numbers and writing down something in my own words that would be meaningful to look up at a later date, which does prove to be worthwhile in my limited experience. But anyway, with War and Peace, I did 140. I've marked 140 pages of particularly worthy of recollection and rereading, I suppose. I mean, I have the idea that I'm not going to read this thing, that there are other books in the world to read in addition to War and Peace, but rereading it via 140 pages sounds a bit better from my point of view anyway. So, yeah. In the main, or rather, while I'm here, I've got a picture, and I don't know what it is, because there was a guy, or rather, I think there was a couple on the web, on the internet in England, and they were selling A4 pictures of famous pictures, and yeah, there's a little bit of a story attached to it. Curiously enough, unfortunately, that company has closed down. But I was rooting around trying to find out why or anything about the company and so forth. And it turns out that, or rather, on Companies House records, it kind of looks like that she left him in May, and he decided to close the business down in September. Nothing to do with War and Peace, of course. But here is one of the prints that I got that I received in error. I don't know what it is. I've got no idea what it is, and it looks kind of without the glare. It looks a bit kind of, I don't know, Russian, maybe, but Eastern European. I don't know. Quite sure what it's supposed to mean either. So if anyone's got any idea what on earth that is, who's it by, because it will be by a famous person, then please let me know. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the book review. Let me hold the book up. War and Peace. It involves us in a great panorama of human life, including realist perspectives, things domestic, personal and visceral, as well as intellectual and societal. Russia is an extreme to Europe's England. The bulk of the population are serfs, and the Tsar is an absolute ruler. Alexander II emancipates the serfs in 1861, 8 years before the final publication of War and Peace, by decree. But regardless, Orlando Figes says War and Peace is also about patriotism and the awakening of, and I quote, a national consciousness, close quotes, and the patriotic virtues of the peasant soldier is found throughout the ranks, who began to realize the potential for democratic nationhood. This is, of course, something that, alas, continues and remains elusive in Russia's continuing arc of political tragedy. Publication of this book that occurred in its final form, or in its first form, was in 1869, and there were issues thereafter with the subsequent publications, and with and some interesting stuff about the translations into English, just for starters. Presumably, there's all sorts to say about all the other languages. But otherwise, there is an interesting little section right at the beginning here called the Translator's Note. And it gives a little potted history of the different translators, and therefore the different translations into English, which starts with Clara Bell, interestingly enough, from 1885 through 6. There's a Dole, a Wiener, 1889 and 1904. And then there's the famous Louise and Aylmer Maud translation from 1923. Okay, why not? I mean, they had the privilege of consulting with Mr. Tolstoy personally back in the day, and he gave their work his own personal endorsement, and even says that better translators could not be invented. And perhaps, and presumably, that is the reason why Oxford University Press can claim on the front cover of their, at least their newest edition of War and Peace, that it is, what is it, the definitive edition or something? Well, and maybe it is, and then again, maybe it isn't. There is the Edmonds version, translation of 1957. There is the Dunnigan of 1968. And then there doesn't seem to be any further copies, any further translations into English. Because, heck, why not? I mean, what's wrong with the Maud? But Anthony Briggs has plenty of things to say about, well, not so much what's wrong with it, but how it's perhaps 100 years old. And whilst that is suitable for its own time, there are interesting things that are, yes, that are pertinent, shall we say. To take a specific example, Pierre, watching as a cannonball crashes down into the Raevsky Redoubt and takes a man's leg off, hears another soldier call out in response, "Ech, neskladnaya." The various English versions of "Ech, neskladnaya" include "Ech, you beastly thing," and "Oh, awkward one." and "Oh, you hussy," and "You're a bungler," and "Awkward baggage." And that was the Maud version, curiously enough. And he says that the best in terms of natural speech is Clara Bell's "Ah, you brute." The original, with connotations of both awkwardness and femininity, is rather difficult to translate. But one thing is certain: no soldier in the heat of battle ever said anything like most of the phrases that I just read out that were offered in the other translations. Okay, so yeah, this translation is from 2005. So there does seem to be a little bit of competition. At times, we might find it baffling and mind-boggling, merely of its time, but timeless, relatable, and revealing. It is not perfect because it is a human story, but it has a wholeness and perhaps a critical mass. And therefore, it has lessons for all of us, whether we heed them or not. Approach it without so much expectation, in defiance of the hype, and allow yourself to walk with it in its own good time. For the Russians will always, as again Feiges says, turn to War and Peace in order to find within it the keys to their identity. And yet, moreover, in the end, it is a plain affirmation of human life, and that this is why one can return to it and always find new meanings and new truths. So that's my take on War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Happy reading and happy perseverance. And, well, bye for now.